Live, everybody. Thanks for coming in today. I appreciate you having me in. Susan and I had been talking about this for actually quite some time, and my whole background is a real estate investor. I've been investing in real estate, acquiring properties for 18 years, but truth be told, I used to be a real estate agent myself. I did not like the business as much as you guys probably like the business. I hated it, and I had to find my escape route out of it. What inspired me to develop this presentation for people that are real estate practitioners such as yourselves is some stories that happened to me during my journey, right? Kathy Shalansky, who's actually here, was friends with my dad. She helped us out with many open houses over the years, of course, and then she grew her own empire and has her son actually here today, so this is awesome. But to get real here, for the people that are watching this right now, and the people that are here, there are some of you who are going to work until you die. And it's true. And the reason why I learned this in a really sad story was there was a friend of mine who has seen these in memoriam things you see on the MLS, right? Local real estate agent that passed away. Well, I was friends with one of them, and I saw her name come up, and I remembered I saw this lady climbing over a snowbank 2 weeks prior, putting up an open house sign. Okay. Additionally, my dad used to joke with me about that. Matt, I'm going to have to work until I die. I'm playing catch up, trying to put money away for retirement, and he would say it jokingly and that sort of thing. The sad thing is he did. And he worked right up until the day he died. Right. So the important thing here is, as real estate professionals, self-employed people, we need to figure out ways to diversify our income streams. You are all self-employed, you own your own business, but you are your business. And unfortunately, as a 1099 independent contractor, you own your own job. So if something happens to you, or you're just sick of it, or want to go to Italy for 2 months and forget about real estate, then that's not going to be a thing if you're relying on 100% from brokerage income. So real estate investing is what I found is my ticket. I started back in 2006. My first property was a 4-family property, they owner occupied. My dad was kicking me out of the house, and I didn't like the idea of paying rent because I wasn't paying rent living with him for free. And so I bought my first 4-family property, and that's really where I got bit by the bug. So this is really a crash course. What's being streamed live here today is about 30 minutes. We're going to have time to chat, afterwards, live question and answer and that sort of thing, while we're having some Chipotle, which is courtesy of, I hear, Dollinger and Associates is bringing some Chipotle in today. So that being said, let me wake up my monitor here. What I'm going to go through is sort of like developing your why associated with why you want to consider being a real estate investor, how to finance properties as an independent contractor, because that's very difficult. I can tell you my story during that exercise. What types of properties to consider, or what types of strategies to consider when you are looking to acquire investment properties. Okay, and also how to run the numbers or analyze properties. And then some additional resources at the end that you can use to further your education in this process, because I hate to say it, there's only a certain amount of information I can convey in 30 minutes. All right. So I titled this Investment Property for Real Estate Agents. So understanding your why. Okay. When I was in real estate brokerage, I talked to investors all the time, and in the discovery process of interviewing that client to see if they're going to be a good fit, or if I'm going to be a good fit for them, I always want to understand, why do you want to buy an investment property? Okay. Oftentimes, if I heard, well, I just heard it was a good idea, it's not a big enough why. I want to fund my kids' college education, so I want to buy a property I can pay off in 18 years. Okay, that's a good why, right? A lot of people want to supplement their retirement income. That's another clearly defined why associated with buying real estate. All right, it is not something to take lightly. It's not something to be like, well, I hear it's a good idea, so I should buy an investment property. So really having that in terms of what your financial goals are. So real estate is a get-rich-slow business. All right. So if you buy a single-family house, the real numbers, that thing is probably going to cash flow you maybe $300 a month. all right? So buying one small property is probably not going to fund your entire retirement plan, but owning several of them could, right? So if your objective is to be able to have $60,000 a year, tax-free, you're gonna have to own a certain amount of properties to do that, so adding the math up. But here's the thing, how many people here actually own income property right now? Okay, pretty much everybody, all right? Don't get mixed up in terms of like, it starts with one step, it starts with one property, all right? 99% of the people that are out there want to own property. They want to own investment property. They've always fantasized about it, but they never do, all right? So congratulations to those of you who are watching this and are here that have actually bought a property, because you're in the 1%, all right? So the idea is just buy your first property, right? Be armed with the intelligence to make the best decision, but don't get analysis paralysis about it, all right? So the additional things that are, people talk about cash flow a lot in real estate investing. Cash flow is just one of the very, very small benefits of owning income property. The additional benefits are appreciation. I'll go over an exercise really shortly there. Appreciation, we call real estate an inflation hedge, all right? The reason why is because you can borrow dollars in today's value. Who thinks the dollar is going to go up in value over time? Up in value? The dollar?
The dollar?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess answering the question, things will get more expensive. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, the dollar was, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, got it, sorry, I was answering
So,
the wrong question.
The dollar is going to go down in value over time,
Yeah.
because we have a Federal Reserve Bank that wants to make sure that we have inflation so that people keep spending money and buying things in today's dollars. With real estate, you can actually borrow money in today's dollars and pay them back in depreciated dollars over time, right? Your tenants pay their rent, you pay your mortgage payment stays fixed over that time period. Additionally, every home or every commercial property or whatever, if you think about it, is a big basket of commodities, right? It's steel, it's wood, it's copper, it's glass. All of these things are finite resources that go up in value over time. Not to say you're going to disassemble your entire property and bring it to a scrapyard and that sort of thing, but the replacement cost goes up over time, so that you actually have a built-in competitive advantage in a property that increases value over time as a result of that. Because you see the news, we are always having a housing shortage, and we always will have a housing shortage. So that's your unique competitive advantage. Debt pay down, right? My tenants help me pay down about almost $200,000 a year in debt on an asset that appreciates in value. So debt pay down is an incredibly understated benefit of owning income property, using leverage to purchase that income property. So that property, your equity position actually grows over time as your tenants help you pay down debt. So I want to go into debt a little bit further, because debt is what allowed me to take an original $16,000 investment for my first investment property back in 2006 and grow that $16,000 investment using specific strategies. If you want to look at how to scale a real estate investment portfolio, research the BRRRR strategy. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. I was able to recycle that same capital through buying appreciating real estate with rents increasing over time to a portfolio that we own now, which is worth $15 million and grosses $2 million a year in gross rents, okay? This is what you can do with, and this is only possible through being able to borrow money and OPM, other people's money, okay? And utilizing the banking system that was actually developed to help real estate investors grow their real estate portfolios, provide housing, create places for people to shop, places for people to work. So the power of leverage, I have it quite simply here, right? So if you take a property that appreciates 3% per year, you put 20% down, $20,000, and that property appreciates, the appreciation is $3,000 a year, and your down payment doesn't change. That's 15% per year that your equity position appreciates without rents going up, without even considering debt pay down. So the returns, when you're buying the right deals, are actually, much better than you can achieve in a stock market, and real estate is something that you can piss on, okay? This is something a Southern gentleman told me. Like advice for real estate, right? Okay, so this is the big thing that was my dad's problem. So who's familiar with self-employment tax? Cute little thing called self-employment tax. We should all be familiar with that. Real estate agents are always incentivized by the IRS to maximize the amount of deductions that they have each year, all right? To pay lesser income tax and lesser self-employment tax. Where that shoots you in the foot is your Social Security benefit gets calculated by how much you pay into it, right? So the games that I used to play, well actually I'm still playing this game, and my dad played was that we're gonna have a very, very small Social Security income stream to rely on in retirement, all right? So that kind of cuts both ways, and another thing is like...
Can you just move over this way just a little bit?
This way?
Yeah, because I want people to see this.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
I'll move right,
your video.
I'll move right here actually, right? Okay.
There you go.
So, so we had the strategic reduction in self-employment tax and that sort of thing. So we talked about the negative implication to Social Security income, right? So the beautiful thing about real estate and how the IRS actually incentivizes people to buy residential and commercial income properties is this concept of depreciation, all right? Residential properties, you can depreciate that property, the actual building value itself, less the land value at over 27 and a half years. Okay, so who has a calculator? I know that Fran doesn't have a calculator. She's actually live streaming this right now for me. Thank you, Fran. So if you take, let's say, $100,000 condo divided by 27.5.
36.
Okay, so 36. This is a phantom expense you get to write off every year as an income property owner, right? I didn't know this when I first started this. I just noticed that as I was buying more property, my tax liability started going down. I was like, I'm building wealth, but my taxes are going down. How does this make sense, right? This is where depreciation comes into play. So you find $100,000 condominium. I'm using condominiums as a example because condos, the tax benefit of owning condos. I'm not saying I own any of them, but there's no land component associated with it, so it makes the math a lot easier for this exercise. But let's say that condominium cash flow is $300 a month, right? So it's $3,600 a year in cash flow. That cash flow basically gets wiped out through this phantom depreciation expense. So you essentially create tax-free income for yourself, all right, over a 27-and-a-half-year period. Yes?
And if that cash flow was negative, for example, or you ended up net negative after all your expenses, aren't we also able to take that depreciation because we're in real estate where most people can't take that negative?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So also I should have did a little disclaimer here, and then always consult with a CPA.
Yes.
I'm not a CPA. I like to think that I'm a CPA sometimes, but I can give people bad advice and they can get in trouble. So for me, I was capped, while I was a full-time real estate agent, I was capped at $25,000 a year in passive losses against my active income, okay? When I essentially walked away from my W-2 1099 in terms of exchanging my time for dollars and became what's called a real estate professional status in the eyes of the IRS, you can actually, because now they're taking this thing as passive income and now you're claiming it as an active trade or business. Same asset, same business, just different classification of the IRS. So I'm actually able to take, and once you do that, let's say you're like, I want to get out of real estate sales in 5 years, I want to just build a real estate empire, that sort of thing. You can still maintain being a real estate broker and generating gross commission income through real estate, but now you're not capped at $25,000. You can take 100% of the passive losses from your real estate holdings against that income. So you can actually generate active income without paying any taxes on it, all right? Doesn't help you Social Security wise, but this is what a lot of people do. This is what I do myself. Great little slick trick is that if you have a spouse that is like, you're looking to be a realtor for the rest of your life, all right? And you have a spouse that doesn't want to work forever or wants to have just a side hustle, if you file joint married, you can actually have them elect to be a real estate professional, okay? And then you can take the entire, losses, phantom losses, and also net loss carry forwards in terms of losses you had in years prior that you couldn't write off against your active income. like basically right in that year against any income that you have in terms of active income. So it's like a huge hack.
Can you say that again? Can you say that one more time?
So actually, one of the guys in my commercial real estate mastermind, Brian, his wife was had the job of being a stay-at-home mom, all right, which is a job, but you just don't get paid for it, all right. And so he decided, okay, let's have her file as a real estate professional, okay. He was working at Bausch & Lomb, all right. And so when he did that, the year he did that, all those net loss carryforwards they had been banking up from being capped at $25,000 a year, they were able to bring those forward against his income from Bausch & Lomb. All right. So that's like talk to your CPA about this. Real estate professionals, when somebody switches the status, you want to make sure that it's bona fide. It's not like I have another guy that's a friend of mine that was still working at Gleason Works and decided, I'm going to change myself to a real estate professional status. And he got audited last year. And so now he's scrambling, trying to think like, I had to prove a certain amount of hours that I was working in my real estate business, and it's just a huge mess you don't want to deal with.
So they made his wife the real estate property manager, basically.
Yeah, the real estate professional.
Got it.
And if you're filing joint married, then basically that just
And she didn't have to have a license, Matt?
No.
Okay.
No, you do not have to be licensed to be what's called a real estate professional. You just have to be somebody that's like, can say that they're active in the actual management of the business.
Like
and
their
properties and that
primary,
sort of thing.
right? Okay.
Correct. Yep. So this is kind of another why with me is that when I started buying income property, it made me a better agent. All right. I kind of had this analogy. I was thinking about this last night that income properties are like the tic tac to your commission breath. Okay. One of the things that happened to me, and there's a who has a seasonality to like commission income throughout the year? Everybody thinks the winter is going to be bad. The winter's not so bad because you had closings in fall and that sort of thing. They carry you through the winter. Well, while everybody was asleep during the holiday season, not doing anything in terms of looking at houses and that sort of thing, it's when I always like felt this. Late winter to early springtime was like brutal. And there was a time that I actually had to I had $200 in my bank account, and I had to get a job at Two Vine, who remembers Two Vine in Rochester, as a bus boy so my bank account didn't go to negative balance. Yeah. I was like, I got a couple closings coming up, I just got to do this, that sort of thing. And in the meantime, during this whole pressure, every year during this time, I would take on clients that I had no business working with. Those clients you just know within 5 minutes, you're like, these are going to be the biggest pain in the ass nightmare people to work with, right? So I made a decision associated with that, and also
scarcity mode, right?
Yeah, and also being like, I need to get a deal, I need to close a deal, I need to get I need to get a contract done and that sort of thing. So this is what I mean by tic tac to your commission breath. So all right, cool. So there's different types of properties. I'll go over a few of them and kind of like the benefits and negative things associated with them, right? So a lot of people get started in single family rentals. All right, single family rentals are great. All right, you usually get long-term tenants that stay for a long time. I own multifamily properties, and we bless our lucky stars when we have a tenant that stays more than 3 years. Okay, with single family rentals, if you're selected the right tenant, they have their own backyard, they have a dog, they have kids that go to the school district. All that stuff leads to a retention factor that, I have some single family rentals where I've had the tenants there for like 10 years. And sometimes I forget they even exist, okay? So definitely less management intensive. It just comes in the front end in terms of tenant screening and making sure you get the right tenant in place and providing the right product. The downside of single family rentals is that it's not scalable, all right? There's a lot of the product out there, right? We have a ton of single-family houses, especially in the greater Rochester area and similar metropolitan statistical areas throughout the country. But it's very hard if your goal is to completely replace your income and become financially independent from earning commission income, then it's difficult to scale that business. So because the cash flow is typically lower, all right? Which leads me to multifamily, which is one of my favorites. Single family, the other downside is that tenant moves out or stops paying rent, you go from 100% occupied to 0%, 100% vacant, okay? If you're floating a mortgage payment, taxes, insurance, all that stuff, that could be, that can turn into nightmare territory or fear territory for people, right? With multifamily, you have a diversified income source. So if you have 4 units, one tenant moves out, then at least you have enough income coming in to pay the mortgage payment and so on and so forth, all right? The downside is the higher turnover, right? People usually get an apartment because they're like, I want to get an apartment with my roommate for a couple of years until I blew up and I buy a house with my dream spouse, okay? So they're typically, or I'm not sure if I'm going to be working here forever, I might move to a different city. So the turnover is definitely a big expense to consider when you're doing multifamily. And we have our specific systems with our property management company that we have when a tenant turns over, their lease ends at 12 o'clock noon. The new tenant's lease starts at 12 o'clock noon the next day, and we have our teams turn those units overnight. So we have no vacancy loss associated with the turnover. However, we pay our people overtime to do that. It's expensive, right? The average turnover can cost anywhere between, on the low end, $1,000 because you got to go in there, you got to touch up paint, you got to test outlets, all this preventative maintenance stuff, and especially if you're renting to younger professionals like I do, which I used to be, a younger professional, I was a disaster, right? We'd have people that would have leaks coming in from their ceiling that they never called us about, and we'd have, major repairs to come in and do, right? The third, which is my passion, is commercial property, okay? I got into commercial because over an 11-year period, I had accumulated enough small multifamily properties to replace my own income, all right? So I didn't have to sell real estate anymore. And I started this journey with my strong why associated with the journey is because I lost both my parents in my 20s. And I saw, this whole thing of getting a job and working hard and paying your bills and that sort of thing, and seeing with estate issues of realizing my parents were living paycheck to paycheck during the entire process was a system I didn't want to participate in, right? So I had the passion, I had the destination of becoming financially independent by the time I was 40 years old. I was able to achieve that when I was 33, but I had a wife, right? I got married, and this whole dream of being able to go to Italy for 2 months, backpacking through Europe and that sort of thing wasn't gonna be a thing when she was in Hilton High School teaching math, okay? So I bought my first commercial income property, and that was really my next aha moment. I was able to replace her income with that one property and add about $500,000 in net worth. It is on commercial property, it's more of a meritocracy, okay? And we have Chris right here who's in the commercial side of things, and also Allison as well as a commercial property, and does investment properties as well. The reason why I mean it's more of a meritocracy is because when you buy a single family, a small multifamily, 1 through 4 unit, you are hamstrung in your wealth creation ability by what your neighbor's house sold for down the street, okay? You're hamstrung by sales comps. With commercial, it's like you are, it's like you're buying a stock, you're buying a business. And when you buy Apple stock, for instance, you're hiring Tim Cook as the property manager, or the manager for that company, right? And you own a little slice of the whole thing. And if Tim can figure out a way to sell more iPhones while keeping variable expenses, flat or stable, or is able to sell iPhones for more expensive, then you get compensated that as an owner of the company through its increase in EBITDA, earnings before
Taxes, appreciation, depreciation.
and amortization, right?
Amortization.
Okay, yeah, we have Susan, who's a recovering accounting professional. So in this case, in commercial property, you are the chairman of the board, you are the CEO. All right, so you are in control of this. The more you're able to increase net operating income on the property, you're able to vastly increase the value of the property, okay? Case in point, there's a lease that we're negotiating on a property we bought last year. It's a high-rise office building, and we bought it for $2.75 million, and we're negotiating a lease with a state tenant that's going to, once the lease is signed, God willing, it gets signed soon. Working with the government is really hard. The value of the property is going to shoot up about $1.7 million and about $125,000 a year in cash flow through an ink sliding across a lease, okay? So
Is this in Rochester too, Matt?
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is all your properties in New York?
Yes, they're all in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is where to buy, okay? I'm always an advocate of buying in your own backyard, okay? This is where you have your competitive advantage. You guys are full-time out there, educating yourself and being experts in the market. Like, you know every street like the back of your hand, every block like the back of your hand, all the players in the marketplace. So don't minimize that. Like, a lot of us are thinking like, there's no deals around town, you need to go out of state, right? Or there's this one guy Bob, who's buying all the apartment buildings around town, and I need to go to another market where there's not a Bob, okay? I hate to break it to you, but there's a Bob everywhere in every market,
Yeah.
right? So why don't you use your distinct competitive advantage to your own benefit, all right? So that's me and my soapbox about commercial, all right? So the whole bottom line here, who watches It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right? Okay. Is don't get confused about all the strategies and all the asset classes and all this stuff. You're going to see like alphabet soup there as you're educating yourself further with, you know, the Burr method and the 5% rule and the 2% rule and the 1% rule and all this stuff and STRs and MTRs and LTRs. Just do a deal, damn it. All right, if you haven't done one already, because that's what will put you in the 1%. Okay,
Nike, just do it.
just do it. All right, because especially in this day and age when there's so much content out here, right? This is a piece of content you're watching right now. There's probably 500,000 people that are live on Facebook right now, all right? And there's probably thousands of them are talking about real estate investing. Just don't get analysis paralysis. It's the idiot's business, okay? Just remind yourself of that, right? A lot of your clients that are investors that are successful, you're probably like, how? God, they're successful despite themselves. They're a freaking idiot. Like, how do they do it, all right? And a lot of this happens to smart people, right? So you're like, you know, you get analysis, you get analysis, you did good in school and that sort of thing. It's the people that are out there, they're making bold moves that are actually making stuff happen.
Yeah.
So just don't do that.
I call it don't get stuck in the gap trap, right? Of
Don't get stuck in the
knowledge
gap
and
trap.
action. That's the gap trap.
All right, so implications of the rental property investment. Let me see here. I'm going to go into this a little bit, but there's a time commitment for it, okay? So if you're starting out small or building a small portfolio, you are still going to have a certain amount of time commitment associated with it. So just don't think that real estate's going to save you and it'll just figure itself out. The money is made in the actual management of the deal, all right? I've seen people take great deals and turn them to hell in a handbasket through bad management and not keeping their eye on the ball, okay? So you want to make sure that you are being a good steward of the assets that you acquire because you have a lot of stake, right? You're borrowing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy property, right? There's a maintenance and repair responsibilities with rental property. One of the things that is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, okay?
Yeah.
That type of thing in terms of like doing things right the first way. When you get a quote on a hot water heater, it's like $700. How much do they cost these days, by the way?
Well, a hot water heater?
Yeah.
Like $1,500-$1,800. It
15,
went up way high.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
installed.
So you may get a quote from a guy that's like, yeah, I got a scratch and dent, and I'll do it for $500. It's from some chuck in a truck, and then 2 months later you got problems with your water heater, right? So the whole adage of pay me now, pay me later, right? So make sure that you're doing stuff on the front end correctly, because when you do it on the front end, you get it done right. Like you never have to hear about it again, right? And it's sort of like maintenance and stuff like that. It can be a death by 1,000 paper cuts with your positive mental mojo that you need to maintain as sales professionals in your business. Like, just do things the right way, make the sacrifice, and do that. So, also being educated on the legal considerations, especially tenants' rights, eviction laws, that sort of thing. You guys have a relationship with an attorney. If you're looking to get in this business, like, go out to lunch with them, all right? And make sure that they specialize in actual tenant, landlord-tenant law and that sort of thing. If they don't, get a referral. I mean, if you have to pay an attorney to hang out with them for an hour and spend $500 doing so, and the knowledge you acquire during that interaction saves you tens of thousands of dollars from a nightmare tenant situation, then it's worth the investment. And also it helps you develop your confidence too, right? Because you develop confidence, you're more decisive, all right? financial risk and mitigation strategies. I don't even know what I was thinking there. I think I had ChatGPT put this together for me. So I'm just kidding. But just keep yourself, with this grounded in this, that real estate is not passive income. There's a lot of things like you see the stuff like, on these, Insta gurus and that sort of thing, get $10,000 a year in passive income. It's not passive, all right? Real estate requires your attention. And so don't get it twisted. It's passive-ish, all right? And what I mean by that is that, like for instance, now, my objective was to fire myself for the management of my properties back 5 years ago when I formed Oak Grove Management Company. My partner David, we meet together to discuss operations 1 hour a week. Okay, so 4 hours a month is my goal. Is my responsibility, and the properties are tended to properly and that sort of thing. Okay, so just don't get that twisted.
Matt, real quick, can you share, you might have shared in the beginning and I missed it, when you transitioned from real estate sales and replaced your income with, passive-ish income, right? How many hours a week are you working now in total?
On the management side of things?
Yeah.
1 hour a week.
1 hour a week, okay. And then on thought leadership and
Thought leadership, probably like 30 hours a week.
Okay,
Thought
yeah,
leadership stuff, like the stuff that I'm doing right now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and by the way, this is a whole other thing, like on how to use social media. Social media is an amazing tool for anybody who owns a business. Like, learn how to use it effectively, because it's the reason why I did this. I saw the magic associated with it. Being a go-to person, a subject matter expert on something that people want to learn about, has been amazingly transformative in my business. It's how I've been able to be an effective capital raiser, because the deals that we buy, and we're talking about creative finance in a little bit, but the deals we buy, like, we don't have the hundreds of thousands, not millions of dollars to buy the commercial deals we have. We have to raise capital. And so the way we're able to do that is being omnipresent in the marketplace as trustworthy, ethical, successful commercial real estate practitioners and developers. So that's something that you should definitely consider with whatever sort of business objective you have. Okay, location, very important, because I see a lot of real estate agents that are going against their own advice of location. I hate that. Sort of one of the three most important things in real estate. It's the only thing you can't change about a real estate deal. All right, you can change the hot water heater, you can change the roof, you can put an addition onto a house and create an additional bedroom. You can cut a single family house into 2 units. I mean, you can do anything, right? You can't change the location, right? You can't just like pick it up and move it to someplace else if you bought a property in a war zone, all right? It's just not a thing. So don't get low bid syndrome when it comes to location, all right? I'd rather see you, want to get low bid syndrome and hire the cheapest hardwood flooring refinishing guy. Worst case scenario is that your house gets burned down. You put an insurance claim, all right? Location is not, it's like unrecoverable. It's an unforgivable sin, all right? So don't sacrifice on location and thinking that whole mantra of like there's a butt for every seat type of thing. So buy in desirable locations where people want to live. And we have a hotline if you consider. Why do people buy in bad locations? It's because it's less expensive, right? And the numbers scream off the spreadsheet when you analyze these properties. Like, what could possibly go wrong by buying a $40,000 duplex? All right,
25% ROI.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like I could double my money. I could double my money in 6 months. Like, nobody wants to live there. That's the reason why it's so cheap. All right, at least nobody with means. And you want to be my dad told me this, is that when you're starting a business, you want to specialize in delivering a product or service that somebody wants, not that somebody needs. All right, so buy where people want to live or work or play or whatever. Okay, the hotline, if you're ever considering buying a junk property, is right here. This is my cell phone number. All right, I will come and actually drive to where you are and slap you. All right, this is a huge one. Financing investment properties. All right, I'll tell you my story. The first property I bought in 2006, the 4-family, I'm glad subprime mortgages were still around. They were called, what was it, non-conforming loans? Okay, yeah, it was a nice way of saying subprime mortgages. That was even hard to get as a realtor at that time. I didn't have, at that time I just started in real estate, didn't have 2 years worth of tax returns, so on and so forth. So I actually had to convince my dad to put me on payroll as an admin at Nothinga Realtors, with the idea is like, Dad, put me on payroll and then I'll pay you back once I close on the property. That's the only way I was able to finance that property, okay? We don't have the luxury of having a W-2 paycheck, which that's what banks like to do. So conventional financing is definitely gonna be difficult for realtors trying to, yes?
What do you think of DSCR loans today?
DSCR loans are actually a great tool that's actually come back. Like, you know, it's the problem is that sometimes the rates are going to be a little bit higher. Sometimes the terms are going to be different. This is not a Fannie Freddie agency type of product and that sort of thing. But that's typically what you're going to have to rely on is creative financing, which we'll talk about, and other sources of financing that aren't in that sort of cookie cutter Fannie Freddie underwriting guidelines that a lot of you guys aren't going to fit into, and I did myself, and I continue not to fit in those things. All right, and that's the thing. Social Security, and also like you make yourself unbankable in the process. I remember every year towards the last quarter of the year, my dad would look at our potential tax liability for the year, and then he'd put a shit ton of money into marketing every year, right, at the end to lower his tax liability, right? And so that type of stuff makes agents largely unbankable in the conventional lending sort of thing. So bottom line is you're gonna have to be resourceful, and it's possibly resourceful because that's what I do every day. All right, so who's heard of portfolio loans? Okay, all right, so a lot of you guys are used to the conventional financing that you put your clients with because it's 30-year fixed rate mortgages. Portfolio loans are basically, it's on balance sheet lending. Fannie Freddie stuff is what they call off balance sheet lending with banks, right? You know, mortgage banks like whoever, big names around town, they make money on basically the origination fees and that sort of thing, and also maybe a small spread when they sell that sell that mortgage off. Okay. But it always has to comply with Fannie Freddie guidelines. So small banks and credit unions, they have large deposits and they need to pay interest payments on those deposits, and they have to keep their lights on at their branches and pay their employees, that sort of thing. So they have to generate income, interest income to do that, and they love commercial and income generating property to finance that because it's their first lien position. It's not a small business loan with a business that goes up in smoke in 2 years. So they love financing investment properties. All right. The downside to it is that they manage their interest rate risk. All right. So it's not going to be a 30-year loan. It's going to be more something like a 10-year term with a balloon at the end, and the interest rate's fixed for 5 years. Okay. Or CNB, for instance, has like a 3-year callable type of loan. Right. So it's like the interest rate's fixed for 3 years, and then they have the option to call the loan at the end of 3 years. So these are not long duration type of things, but it's not a problem because, like I said earlier, with the appreciation play with real estate, us as a company, we refinance our properties, get new debt on it every 5 to 7 years. All right, it's just a part of the business, and that allows us to actually pull cash out of those properties, hundreds of thousands of dollars out of those properties, and and use that cash to help grow our business at an exponential rate. All right. So there's portfolio loans. Any questions about portfolio loans in terms of lending credit facilities through banks? No? Okay. Who's heard of hard money lenders? Anybody here? Okay. All right. So network with hard money lenders because you may find an opportunity out there. You're looking at a property that a potential client doesn't want to list the property in the market for whatever reason, but you find it might be a good opportunity for yourself, but the shingles of the roof are blowing off. It's got some type of condition issues to it, some type of occupancy issues with it. Hard money lenders are basically, they're private individuals or companies that provide private financing for the acquisition of investment property. They will not lend to you personally in terms of Susan Glenn's, but they will lend to Susan Glenn's LLC. All right. So the problem is that it's typically shorter term type of financing. Most of them will only lend for 1 year. But as you start to network out there and develop your network of other active investors out there, you'll get to know other private money lenders or hard money lenders that will do longer terms and also lower rates. All right. So some of you know of some hard money lenders. What are the typical terms that just throw it out there?
212.
12%, 2 points.
Yeah, so 12% interest and 2 points, right? If you do your research out there and build your network, you can find hard money lenders that will do less than that, right? And they'll be more creative and more generous in terms of, lower down payment as long as the deal makes sense. So the typical business model with financing purchases with hard money loans is buy the property, rehab it, rent it out, and then bring that property to a bank to refinance it and take that hard money out, all right? Refinances are a lot easier than acquisitions with community banks, all right? Because they're like, okay, because they're also not going to, when you're doing an acquisition, they look at what your personal balance sheet is, right? How much cash do you have? Do you have the cash to put down on the property? And do you have post-closing liquidity on the property? When you're bringing properties that you finance through hard money lending to a bank after you've made it more bankable, the bank really doesn't care about they want to make sure you don't have $0 in cash on your balance sheet, but they're a lot more flexible in terms of okay, this property's got tenants in it, it's generating income. Some of them require some seasoning on the property, meaning that they want to see some tenancy at the property, that sort of thing. But it's a great way to scale without having your own cash as a bottleneck to your growth.
Matt, did you use hard money for your residential and commercial, or just commercial?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both. Last time we used hard money for one of our acquisitions was a high-rise building, it was a mid-rise building at 17 East Main Street, downtown. It was a $175,000 purchase. We needed about $50,000 worth of rehab costs, so we borrowed the whole amount from some hard money lenders we work with. So residential, the first time I used hard money, I didn't even know I was using hard money, was 76 Rutgers Street. It was a 4-family property. I bought for $80,000. I needed about $60,000 worth of rehab put into it, and I went to Philadelphia. Philadelphia used to do hard money lending, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've used it a lot as a tool.
Yeah.
I mean, I can a lot of times, right?
So what you did is you used the hard money, and then you would, in a year or so, just go get your loan because it's easier to refinance, or what?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the whole reason I learned about portfolio loans is because Phil wanted to get paid back in 6 months on this property at 76 Rutgers Street. Every bank I talked to wanted to have a year worth of seasoning on the property, right? So I went to, learn about this thing called portfolio loans. I got referred to Canandaigua National Bank, and that's how I ended up doing that deal and paying him back. So, but yeah, so the third tool is seller financing, all right? Anybody done any seller financing deals here? Okay, yeah, we have. Okay, so what are the advantages of seller financing to the seller? Anybody tell me?
They get the interest monthly. I mean, they get a payment monthly.
Yep.
Cash flow, no maintenance.
Cash flow, no maintenance, true mailbox money.
They don't have to show capital gain for the whole sale because they're getting the income over time,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Is that tax
So
advantage you're talking about?
yeah, so it's tax advantage for the seller because one thing is that when they take back a mortgage on a property, remember, they become the bank. When they take back a mortgage on the property, it's being structured as an installment sale, all right? So they only pay an incremental amount of their capital gains, depreciation, recapture based upon the principal payment that you're paying in whatever amortization schedule you do. So it's 100% customizable to your deal and the wants of the seller, right? So one of the things I ask when I'm talking to property owners directly is, all right, because I go through the discovery process as well when I'm talking to property owners, do you want to get paid one lump sum at cash at closing, or would you like to defer your capital gains and have a stream of income post-closing? What do you desire, right? And someone will be like, what do you mean by that, right? And then I explain to them how seller financing works, and our track record of doing it in the past with other property owners. And it's a property they're familiar with, right? It's a business they're familiar with. Like they know the property, they know you're gonna come in and rehab the property and improve the value of the collateral. So it's definitely a win-win. From an income stream, they're gonna get more, a better return by taking back a mortgage with you and you paying them 5-6% interest, whatever you negotiate on it. And they're gonna be able to defer their capital gains on the property, right? And also, it's an additional benefit of putting less down, right? Because the less you put down, the less capital gains they have to pay, so they can defer their capital gains for longer. So if you can negotiate 100% financing on it, then they can defer more of their capital gains, right? Interest-only payments. Hey, how would you like to do interest-only for 5 years? So then you can start to, kick down that principal balance and start paying capital gains at that point in time. All right, so operating the business is really where the money is made. I've bought some mediocre deals over time, and I've been able to turn them into great deals through effective management strategies, okay? And so we went through repairs. I'll show you how I run the numbers and some tools you can use to help you run the numbers as well in terms of analyzing properties effectively, because a lot of people are doing it wrong out there. Tenant screening is really, really important. I was actually on the Bigger Pockets Rookie podcast just recently talking about a nightmare scenario where I had a tenant that didn't pay me for 2 years and put my property on Craigslist for sale for $45,000 with the hopes of collecting cash deposits from victims. And so I talked about my screening process on there. Just make sure, this is a lot of stuff you do on the front end, right? It's not that you're doing responding, so if you do things on the front end correctly, then you can basically idiot-proof your business, all right? So, and then also, if you're gonna hire a third-party management, just don't set it and forget it, inspect your properties, all right? So, it doesn't have to be every week, but once a quarter, drive by them, walk around the properties, go through the common areas if it's multifamily properties, that sort of thing. Document stuff that like, hey, listen, it looks like that light has been out outside, it's like pitch black in the middle of the night, can you fix this? Property management companies aren't going to be as proactive as you are, right? They respond to tenant complaints and tenant maintenance requests, right? So just being proactive, all right? So this is a tool right here. If you want to take a picture of this is actually a great tool for how to analyze rental properties. It's the biggerpockets.com. Who has a Bigger Pockets account here? Okay.
I follow them. What does it mean?
So they have a website. Basically, Bigger Pockets is a social media website for real estate investors. All right, it's totally free to get a Bigger Pockets account. They have forums on there. They have podcasts. They have books. Actually, I gave Fran a book that's signed by the author from Ashley Kerr. Actually, you know Ashley.
Yeah, it's good.
And so, so they have amazing tools. They're educational resources. But this is one of them over here. They have a rental property calculator. I actually took this property off of the MLS. And I just underwrote it based upon the asking price. If you can see cash on cash return on investment of negative 14,000. I'm sorry if this is somebody's listing here. It can make a great owner occupant property. But this here is going to is a great tool to run, and these reports get saved, so you can actually save every deal you've analyzed, that sort of thing. And also you can like have these like little slider things where you can like slide, okay, well if I went from a 25-year amortization to a 30-year amortization, well how would that impact cash flow and debt pay down and all that stuff. So it's a really great, great easy to use tool. The other great part of the tool here, and I'm not paid by Bigger Pockets or anything like that, I'm just like, this is just amazing stuff. So the other thing too is you can pull up rental comps in the area too. So this property here is like a 1-bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment, and I wanted to see if the rents were below market because I was like, these numbers kind of suck. So like, are the rents severely below market based upon the condition of the product, right? So so I pulled up rent comps in the area, 2-bedroom apartments, and kind of looked over there and like I was able to go and see the pictures of them and that sort of thing. So I can actually like, okay, well, if I bought this for this and I didn't change anything, it might be negative cash flow of $14,000. I mean, 14%. But if I was able to bring rents up to market value, then could I make a cash flow at that point in time, right?
So can you input those projections into this?
Yeah, you can input rent growth into there as well. So I'm not sure if you can actually input like, okay, the rent of this apartment is $800 a month, but market rent is $1,400 a month. I'm not sure you can actually do that, but it's easy enough to basically just like go through and just, run the math on, I can just increase the income up this month, this amount, right? So these are generally the things that the way I run the numbers here. So whenever you're running analysis on a property, you take the gross income of the property, you're gonna take 5% write-off associated with vacancy and collection loss. Okay, so that's 5% of your income, take it right off from vacancy and collection loss. This is if you're buying in a great area, okay, or a good area, or workforce area. If you're buying in a really bad area, remember the hotline number to call. That vacancy could be more, right? It could be 10%, it could be 20% based upon turnover and that sort of thing. 10% R&M stands for 10% repairs and maintenance, so 10% of your gross income is going to be, you should budget for repairs and maintenance for a property. And so if it's a $20,000 a year in gross income, then you should be budgeting around $2,000 bucks a year for repairs and maintenance, right? Because like I said, hot water heater goes, it's a $1,500 expense, right? That can get eaten into relatively quickly. And the thing is that sometimes your properties will operate with minimal amount of repairs and maintenance, so over a 3-4 year period, it's always something that's going to happen. It's just going to be a major doozy, okay? So you definitely want to make sure that you plug in repairs and maintenance to your property. A lot of way that people are running their property, their analysis is, what's the rent? What's the mortgage, tax, and insurance? That's my cash flow. Absolutely not right, okay? Because you're not taking into consideration vacancy, repairs and maintenance, management fees, all that stuff. But in general, on at least small multifamily properties, single family, the expenses will generally be about 50% of the revenue, all right? So quick back of the napkin type of thing here. So if I have, Fran's got my calculator. So 20,000, this is about $20,000 a year in gross income, and I take 50% of that, so it's about $10,000 a year in net operating income before your debt service, right? So $265,000 is like, I don't know. I can quickly make an analysis like that. That property's not going to meet my investment objectives. But if you find a property in a great location, it definitely deserves digging in deeper and being like, well, if I could push rents $500 a month up, or $750 a month up, because they're below market, I don't mind, let's say, having negative cash flow of 14% over the first year, if I can turn it into income generating property, because the thing is that, remember, it's get rich slow, right? A lot of investors look at this, well, it doesn't make money from day one, so it doesn't count, right? I want to see if there's some sort of way I can add value on a property that's in a good location to make it a good investment, all right?
Well, and the fact that we have the insiders look at what markets are appreciating for that long-term gain, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And if you're going to buy a property that has negative cash flow for the first year, consider either putting more down on the property or putting cash set aside to fund that shortfall, right? Because you don't want to be like having to come out of pocket later on with that, right? All right, I'm almost done. All right, so in closing, my recommendation is if this is something that interests you, just get obsessed, okay? Because if you're not obsessed, you're going to be average, all right? So be obsessed or be average. And how you do that is just immersing your brain in all this stuff here, right? So this is like super high level. Nothing was sort of like specific with the presentation I did today. And so this is from here on out is really where your education happens, right? So don't listen to music anymore. You listen to real estate podcasts, okay? When you're working out and driving around, listen to podcasts, all right? I love
Do you
Taylor.
have any you recommend, Matt?
Bigger Pockets has a ton of them,
Well,
right?
that was the other thing I was gonna ask. You said you had one that you went on specifically about tenant screening. I was wondering what that was.
That's the Bigger Pockets Rookie Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a podcast myself. It's called Go Big Live, but it's like more commercial oriented. So if you're interested in like commercial real estate, that sort of thing, I bring on guests and I talk to them how they did their first big real estate deal. But the Rookie Podcast is a great one. It's probably like the best podcast on planet Earth as it pertains to real estate investing. I still listen to it myself, even though I'm not a rookie, because even I learn new things when I listen to that show. There's a ton of them. There's a ton of them out there, but those are some of my my absolute
And what's your
favorites.
podcast?
Go Big Live, and it's
Go
Go
Big
Big
Live.
with an exclamation point. So if you're looking at like, hey, I might want to get into commercial eventually, if that's something at least that's of interest to you, I don't do high-level stuff on that show. I basically interview the guest in excruciating detail on exactly how they did their first like big commercial deal, and like teasing out those actionable type of things that you can do. A lot of real estate podcasts are like super high-level, and like 45% of the show is made up of like just the person's origin story, for instance. They don't have a chance to really get into like those like nitty-gritty tactical details. Go to meetups. All right, there's a few around town here. I have to do a shameless plug. I'm president of Freedom First Real Estate Investors Association. So go to their website, look at their calendar of events. We have several throughout the month. That is a great one. We actually have one next Thursday, the 14th, at doors open at 5:30 Eaglevale Banquet Center at Fairport. And that's a place where you can go into a room full of 100 active real estate investors, right? You got to like change your gang, right? So the more you start hanging out with people that are actively doing it, it looks like we actually have some people that are doing it. You should create a little group. But the more you're hanging out with those people, the more real it gets, the more education you get. And our community is so generous with their time, right? There's no secrets in this business, right? If there's people that think that there's secrets in it, they probably don't know what the hell they're talking about, all right? It's the idiot's business, don't forget that. All right, so another thing is in terms of your content, start following active real estate investors on social media to educate yourself, right? Stop looking at pictures of people's food, right? Don't. And then just analyze every property you possibly can. Use those tools. Run the numbers, make it a goal to analyze 5 properties a week, okay? Getting that develops your confidence walking investment properties. Even if you're not in a position to buy something right now or buy your next property, just go out there. Every time a property that is like, yeah, I'd like to own something like that someday, go out and see it. When you start to touch the property and also meet other investors that are looking at those properties, you can learn a ton during that process and develops the confidence level. And then participate in the Bigger Pockets forums. It's a great tool. You can ask any question on there. You can search for previously asked questions and stuff like that. So,
And do you get most of your information from Loop?
from where?
From Loop.
LoopNet.
Yeah.
Sorry, not dot loop.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm gonna give Fran's wrist a break here. So thank you so much, Fran. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good job, Fran.
Thank you. New career.
Yeah, what do they call it? A grip?
She had to turn around the entire time on Facebook, all they